Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Servants. Today I am tackling another fate concept, rather than any one servant in particular. That's right, today I am delving back into the Type Moon Wikipedia to attempt to explain what on earth a pseudo-servant is. Now, this as a subject may seem rather simple, but in actuality it's a bit more complex than it lets on. On the surface, the reasoning behind pseudo-servants is clear. Interject an already known character in the Fate universe into the gacha to generate revenue. Let's not kid ourselves here, we know exactly why this concept has such a long list, and it's to make money. Mind you, I appreciate it in the sense that it does serve as a way to introduce you to other Fate franchises, but at its core, it's obvious what it is. That said though, let's take a look into the concept that is the pseudo-servants. Pseudo-servants are heroic or divine spirits that are unable to manifest for a number of reasons. It is stated that Muramasa, for example, was not worthy of being a true heroic spirit and as such merged with a human in order to anchor himself into reality. On the opposite end, there are divine spirits that are too powerful to manifest outside of a human vessel for a number of reasons ranging from a lack of natural mana in the air to sustain them, to them not being willing to dampen their power when being summoned, as we are able to summon some divine spirits without the need for a human vessel, i.e. Steno, Uriel, and Artemis. Finally, there are simply some saint graphs that cannot be constructed by Chaldea's fate system, with Holmes speculating that some heroic spirits can only be summoned as pseudo-servants. Now, there is an important distinction to be made here. The process in which a pseudo-servant and a demi-servant are created is different. However, the result is the same. A pseudo-servant uses a human vessel as a catalyst to summon a spirit, which can then occupy the body along with the original personality. Alternatively, some servants can be summoned into dead bodies and use those as the vessel. A demi-servant, on the other hand, is a conceptual human who can take a saint graph or spirit and merge it into themselves. The key difference, I believe, is that the spirit that has been merged into a demi-servant is primarily dormant, but gives its skills to the host vessel. An example of this that is not just Mosh is Sieg in Fate Apocrypha, who has merged with Fran through her use of the Blasted Tree. The more prominent example, of course, is our dear sweet Mash, who had Galahad's spirit forced into her from outside forces, and would have killed her in the process had Galahad not realized that she would die and decided to remain merged. Speaking of, back to pseudo-servants, after the merger of the vessel and the spirit, their personalities mesh together to create a new one. Kind of. The effects on the personality of the host body differ from case to case, with sometimes the spirit becoming the more prominent personality like with Kama or Astraya, or sometimes the vessel's personality is the one that takes the forefront, like with Ganesha or Sima Yi. Alternatively, you get the right down the middle examples where the personalities seem to align just right, allowing for a unique character that is both similar and different at the same time, such as Ishtar and Jaguar Warrior. What remains the same, however, is that when the merger occurs, while a spirit may bring most of itself, bringing everything would likely destroy its host. So, certain aspects of the spirit become watered down or transform altogether. Take for instance if a divine spirit possesses a human. The divine core of a goddess may see its rank reduced because the core is now a human vessel. Additionally, some of the divine spirit's abilities may take on a new form that better suits the host body, such as Ishtar suddenly being able to use gem magecraft like Rin does. Depending on how much control the current vessel has, they may even be able to use their own abilities that have now been enhanced by the spirit that is possessing them, such as Sima Yi and Bazet. But how does a spirit go about choosing who it will possess? Well, there is a standard procedure of requirements for this. For one, they must be compatible. They must have similar magic circuits in the shape of the soul, as well as close personalities. Essentially, a spirit wants to find a vessel that resembles them as closely as possible. That said, some spirits have additional requirements before allowing a merger, which is more along the lines of personal reasons than any actual requirements. For example, Jaguar Warrior will only possess someone who carries the fate of wildness or something like that, hence why they pick Tyga. A pseudo-servant has two saint graphs, and depending on how they have merged, are able to be removed from one another. We see this in the case of El Malloy removing Zhui Liang from himself to give to his past self, creating a paradox, kind of. Additionally, it is speculated by a certain tall lady that you can separate a newly formed pseudo-servant by hitting them hard enough with a spiritual attack. But that is a brief overview of the concept. For the sake of this video, I will only be covering the summonable pseudo-servants that exist in FGO as of the recording of this video. So, while I know that Rasputin is a pseudo-servant, we do not have enough information to effectively analyze him, so I will not. To date, there are 16 confirmed pseudo-servants and 4 additional servants that are probably pseudo-servants but have not been titled as such. I will be examining who these people are in Fate briefly and analyzing where they fall in the possession spectrum and what they have gained from being a pseudo-servant. Let's start with the non-confirmed ones. Angerminyu takes the form of Shiro Emiya, but is not actually possessing him. So, I do not believe that he qualifies, but he is listed in the Wikipedia, so I'm going to mention it. Joan of Arc is possessing a girl named Letitia in the story of Fate Apocrypha. Though as far as I know, this is never addressed in FGO, and the two look identical, so the one we summon in Chaldea is actually Jean. Lakshmi Bai is said to be possessed by the deity Alakshmi, and this is hinted at in her story in Lost Belt 4. However, she is not considered to be a pseudo-servant in the game, possibly because this possession was a part of her lore rather than being something that happened to summon a Lakshmi. The final of these is Quetzalcoatl, who is possessing an unknown girl and seems to have taken full control. This is also what is used to explain why she is not a male as Quetz is in his myths, though perhaps due to the complete takeover used to manifest, it is not classified as a pseudo-servant and more closely just to a full-on summoning of a divinity. To date, the following are the summonable pseudo-servants in FGO. Amor, Astraya, Manin McLear, Ayres Kegel, Ganesha, Ishtar, Jaguar Warrior, Kama, Odin, Parvati, Muramasa, Ryogi Shiki, Sima Yi, Shitonai, Yao Bikuni, and Zhui Liang. I will cover these characters in the alphabetical order in which they have been listed. Let us start with Amor. This fusion took place between the Roman god of love Cupid, whose name in Latin is Amor, and Karen Hortensia. Specifically the Karen from Fate Tiger Colosseum, and not the one from Hollow Atraxia. They were able to merge thanks to them sharing similar personalities, Karen being chosen as a sacrifice at the onset of the incineration of humanity, and thus became possessed. Karen is the lead conscious, seemingly having tamped down Amor as the character acts mostly like Karen, including her devotion to the church. That said, she does still inherit much of Amor's abilities and kit, including the Arrows of Love, a divine core that has been dampened by her extreme religious views, so it's ranked B, a Mana Burst Love that is a super skill designed to protect the one that you love, and finally, she normally uses the Shroud of Magdalene to protect herself. This evolves into the skill Shroud of Valentinus. Overall, so long as you use her second ascension, this character may as well just be Karen with some love attributes. You know, until the giant baby thing happens, but what have you. Next up is Astraya. This is a character that I fell in love with at first sight, which is funny to me because normally I'm kinda meh on Luvia as a character. Astraya is a pseudo-servant using the Badia of Luvielita Edefelt as its vessel. Perhaps my liking for her comes from the fact that the primary personality is almost entirely that of the goddess Astraya, rather than Luvia, though they do share some similar qualities. Astraya is a Greek deity that governs over justice and order. In fact, she is one that is still represented heavily to this day as Lady Justice, whose statues can be seen around courthouses and places where the law is being practiced. As a deity, she represents the necessity for order and the need for justice, hence why her noble phantasm does extra damage to evil enemies. As for the girl she is possessing and why, she is Luvia, a rich drill girl who has an imposing presence and a great deal of CQC training. She is a practitioner of gem magecraft, much like Tosaka Rin. Luvia and Rin mix well together, like Sour Patch Kids and milk. So well in fact that they're not allowed to attend the mineralogy classes together at the clock tower. However, outside of Rin, she appears as a calm and collected drill girl. When they merged, Astraya appears to have become the dominant personality, but has become influenced by Luvia. For instance, the addition of CQC and wrestling moves were added to her repertoire, as opposed to simply using the scales and the sword that she is known for. In fact, her scale becomes a conduit for gem magecraft, throwing gems like burning coals upon her adversaries. But most notable is the fact that the end of her noble phantasm has an insane backdrop, as opposed to more star bullets. Her other skills are exclusive to Astraya, being the protection of the scale, Mana Burst Star, and Judgment of the Star. She once again has a divine core of a goddess, but its rank is reduced to B due to her being a pseudo-servant. Interestingly, the wiki for Astraya states that this stop is because of her being a pseudo-servant. So let's be on the lookout from here to see if other pseudo-servants break this role. From Luvia in her direct skill set though, she gets the Territory Creation passive, which is normally exclusive for mages, as it involves the construction of a workshop. So overall, this one is mostly Astraya with an essence of Luvia to her. Now for the most recent pseudo-servant as of the making of this video, Manin McLear, or as they are referred to by most, Bazit. MacLear was the Celtic god of the sea and a king of the fairies, and was the foster father of Diarmid, even being the one who bestowed upon him his favorite weapons, Gaibud, Moralta, and Bigolta. None of which I have pronounced correctly, I apologize. Importantly, he gave Fraha to the sun god Lu. As mentioned, he has fused with Bazit Fraha McRemets, who is a descendant of the clan that first received Fraha. Now, being its current holder, Bazit has appeared in several Fate series, primarily acting as a sealed designation enforcer, which, to put in very basic terms, is a mage who hunts other mages for the Mages Association. This can be seen in her unique playstyle in-game being an anti-magic counter unit. As for who is in control, her case is interesting in that for the first two ascensions, Bazit is the main personality, mostly acting like she does in her other appearances. Upon the third ascension, MacLear takes over, changing her dress to a much more regal one, and her attacks become more godly. Her personality changes from the regular, kudere-ish, tomboyish personality from before, and she acts a touch more regal. It is clear that the reason why she was picked to be inhabited has to do with the connection that Bazit has to the MacLear's Fraha, so the decision to choose her as the vessel fits the bill in much the same way that Chiome is cursed by the Orochi. It has everything to do with her being the wielder of Fraha, hence why he only takes control in the third ascension, more so lending his strength to her and allowing her access to some of his authority. This authority, in-game, is represented through several active and passive skills. She gains Sea God's Ruin, derived from MacLear's authority over the sea. This assists in her magecraft abilities as well as her own strength. She also uses her authority as a sealed designation enforcer, which is a mix of CQC and magecraft, as she knows to take down mages. She has a divinity rank B and a unique passive skill called God's Holder. This skill in-game allows for her offensive buffs to carry over during the enemy's turn. This skill is not given a proper description yet, but my theory, based off of the name, is that because of the connection that Bazit has to MacLear, the merger is much more fluid, so they are able to share even more strength with each other. She also has Succession of the Red Branch Knights, which gives her evade stars and a debuff immunity. This comes from her heritage of being descended from the Fraha clan. Finally, her noble phantasm belongs both to Bazit and MacLear, being Braga. In-game, this gives her a taunt and a unique counter ability, that being that when she is targeted by an ability or an attack, she will respond with an enormous single target hit to the enemy. Note that this can be procced if she is hit by an ability, not just attacks, making her an absolute beast for a lot of different content. Lore has it that alone, Bazit would take a month to be able to produce a single Fraha, but with MacLear she can conjure them much more quickly. This noble phantasm is described as being able to counteract fate, and change a fatal wound to one that is survivable and flip it on the opponent. Essentially, imagine a better Angry Mango NP. It's that. Essentially, as a servant, she is primarily just Bazit, unless you keep her third ascension, but let's be real, we are here for the office lady look. Next up is Ayres Kegel. Oh dear sweet Ayres Kegel. In legend, she is the cold ruler of the Mesopotamian underworld, and was a cruel angel that kept the souls of the dead trapped in hell. She has merged with the soul of Tosaka Rin, and as a result, gained a bit more of a human consciousness, and came to realize that her treatment of the souls of the damned were both, quote, not good and embarrassing, end quote. For having taken Tosaka Rin, a brash tomboyish tsundere as her vessel, Ayres Kegel does not show too many similarities with her, kind of. Instead, she takes on the nature of a much younger Rin, one who's a bit more timid and true to her feelings. She has the personality of a young girl who has been sheltered for her whole life, which is fitting for how Ayres would have lived. The fusion with Rin was done because they had, quote, matching wavelengths, unquote. This fusion begs a question that must now be answered. Why is it that a pseudo-servant can be summoned with two of the same vessel? There are a handful of reasons for how and why this happens, and the explanation given for Ayres is that when Ishtar was summoned into the Babylon Singularity in the vessel of Tosaka Rin, Ayres, being a sister goddess to her, / being two sides of the same coin, was chain summoned with her in the same vessel. This split the vessel into two different personalities that can act independently from one another or something along those lines. The reason why she is summoned to Chaldea in that form is because that is how she has been recorded in the servant records, similarly to how we summon Ivan the Terrible in the Lost Belt form rather than the proper human history version. This varies from case to case though. Back to Ayres, she is an example of a pseudo-servant whose personality merged with another and created a whole new one, so she shares the Dere part of Tosaka Rin, but is still able to display the brutal and cruel nature of Ayres Kegel would she need to. All of her skills and abilities also take after Ayres, with her having a B-rank divinity, her territory creation as being explained as how she has command over the 7 gates of the underworld, and her skill set being Hidden Great Crown, a byproduct of being an existence initially created from Ishtar. Mana Burst Cage, taken from her ability to construct cages for the souls of the damned, and protection of the underworld, the authority she wields being the goddess of the underworld. Her Noble Phantasm is a mirror of Ishtar's. Where Ishtar wields the might of the heavens and sends it down upon earth, Ayres wields the might of the underworld and thrusts it upwards towards the surface, bringing hell to earth. 2 fun facts for you. Her spear is the soul of her ex-husband, who was the sun god Nergal, and she has the authority over snakes to antelopes because she was tricked by Dumazid. Overall, she is a new being, rather than simply a Rin or Ayres. On to Ganesha, the Hindu god of prosperity and the remover of obstacles. He has fused with the human Jinako Kirigiri, for no reason other than the fact that they were compatible, and that Ganesha wished to help out in the events of Lost Spell 4. With that said, Ganesha practically lays dormant within her after the fusion. So, the primary personality is that of Jinako, who occasionally can hear the voice of Ganesha. However, something unique about this summoning is that all Chaldean servants and staff do not recognize her as Jinako, but rather as Ganesha, hence why Karna does not recognize her, despite her being a former master of his, and clearly acknowledging this during the Lost Spell scenario. This is further explained by the fact that her true name is apparently glitched in the system. This is believed to be because of BB tampering with her Saint Graph because she was upset that she's a moon cancer. With that said, however, Jinako is absolutely the one in control for better or worse. She is delicately described as being a worthless shut-in with neat tendencies who is helplessly lazy and self-defeating. However, what she does inherit from Ganesha are his weapons, strength, skills, noble phantasm, and additional arms. She wields a mighty axe, a staff, the weight of an elephant, a spoon, and dango as ammunition. She has Divinity Rank B, the riding skill from Ganesha whose mount is apparently a rat named Mushika, which is amazing, the skill Prosperous Business derived from Ganesha's affiliation over such matters, Broken Tusk, which comes from Ganesha's legend, and Vinyaka, which means the Supreme Head and is said to be a way to remove obstacles. Her noble phantasm is Ganesha Impact, in which she just compresses her divinity into a massive sliding attack, essentially like a running tackle. Overall, this one is just Jinako from Fate Extra, but with benefits, and I'm okay with that. Back to Mesopotamia, we have Ishtar. Once again, this is a deity that has merged with Tosaka Rin for the same reason as Ayres, given that the two were on the same wavelength. However, this time around the pairing seems to be better, as Ishtar's personality and Rin's personality are very close to one another. With that said, Ishtar is the dominant one, and while I would say that she has merged to have a new personality, the two are so close already that it really makes them indistinguishable. They are both self-centered, greedy, hard to deal with, have troubles admitting when they are wrong, and incredibly focused on getting what they want. If you are interested in the lore of Ishtar, I have an entire video dedicated to her that you should check out. But, to summarize, she is the deity in Mesopotamian myth who governs over the heavens and the planet Venus, and is the daughter of the chief god, as well as being a war god and a love god. As such, she is incredibly spoiled and arrogant, hence why she was killed by Ayres after attempting to romp it up in hell just because. However, something did change about her thanks to her merging with a human, and that is that she no longer views humans as lesser beings. The influence of Rin seems to have opened her eyes a bit more to the grand scale of life and permitted her to view the potential that humanity actually has. As such, she is able to grow accustomed to and even appreciate her master as someone who she wishes to see grow. Her skills all come from Ishtar, the deity, though some of them have been altered by possessing Rin. She has Divine Core of a Goddess rank B, Great Shining Crown, which is all of her authorities that she took from Enki. Mana Burst Gem is taken from Rin's Gem Magecraft, customized with Ishtar's natural power. Finally, she uses her authority as a goddess of beauty through the skill Manifestation of Beauty, which has its rank reduced due to her being a pseudo-servant. Her noble phantasm is a mirror of Ayres's. Rather than thrusting up from the ground and raising hell, she ascends to the heavens and utilizes the power of Venus to rain hell upon the earth. In reality, this would be an insanely devastating blow, capable of leveling a city, which in all honesty fits in well with her lore, where she leveled all of Mount Ebba. In fact, this noble phantasm is strong enough and did destroy Tiamat's femme fatale form. To put it simply, she absolutely wields her authority as a goddess of war. As we can see from her rider form, she has also apparently mastered martial arts with the pretext of every goddess needing to know one or two martial arts. Also, the scooter that she rides on is not Mana, the boat of heaven, but rather an altered form of Mana's oars. Also, the thing that runs around her feet that looks like a little pig demon, the thing is Gugalana, the bull of heaven, or as I will be calling it for the rest of time, Gugalili. To sum Ishtar up, she, much like Ayres, is a whole new personality from both Ishtar and Rin. However, both of them act so similarly that they may as well be the same person, but from different time periods. However, the Ishtar aspect does appear to be more prominent than the Rin one. Side note, if you want me to explain Space Ishtar, you're out of your mind, and should just watch my Servantverse video instead. Long story short, they aren't pseudo-servants, but rather 3 individuals from a different dimension, yada 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 yada. It's almost biblical with this stuff, it's wild. Moving on. I could skip this whole next part just by saying that Jaguar Warrior and Tyga are the same. Exactly the same. But I will do my due diligence and attempt to explain this all to you. Here's the issue with Jaguar Warrior. What deity is possessing Tyga? Do you know? Because neither does the game. Allow me to elaborate. Tyga is possessed by the concept of several Jaguar-like deities, with the primary one being from the Olmec civilization, though not as a named deity. Instead, the concept of a half-Jaguar, half-man thing that was believed to roam the forests. Jaguars were symbols of death and war due to their ferocious nature, but she is also possessed by 2 other deities, kind of, in concept, those being Nagual, a guardian spirit, and Texatlipoca. I pronounced that wrong, but that's the rival to Quetzalcoatl from Aztec myth. So, Tyga is fused with less of a singular god and more of a conceptual one that existed across the regions of South and Central America. The flame of the Nagual Jaguar has been able to possess humans for as long as it has existed alongside us. But the criteria for possession, as mentioned prior, is that that person must hold the fate of the wilderness and possess the forces of the wilds. As such, the teacher, Tyga Fujimura, fits the bill perfectly. She is a popular character across several Fate series, usually as a lighthearted gag character. I love her. She acts as a doting older sister, but also a wild, somewhat short-tempered and goofy character. She loves a good drink and good company, but also pulls through when you need her. She is perfect. She breaks the rule of divinity being ranked A. That's right, she has a higher divinity than Ishtar. Why? Because she fits better together with Jaguar deity than Ishtar with Rin. I cannot stress enough that these two are essentially identical. All of her skills are upgraded versions of things that she already knows how to do. An enhanced kick, punch, and eyesight thanks to her possession. The kick becomes an enhanced version of monstrous strength, altered by her possession to be even more powerful. The punch combines both the valor and instinct abilities to become a destructive force, and the eye works better in the forest where jaguars roam, but effectively make her able to predict abilities and attack better even outside of her preferred area. Her noble phantasm is a summoning of the power of the primal flame, turned into a massive claw to destroy her enemies. It is noted in-game that she is just Tyga, and that the jaguar thing is kind of an afterthought, but we're told don't bring it up with her. I want to see her and Tomacat argue, my brain would melt out of my ears and nose, and I would die happy. Kama is a pseudo-servant of the Hindu deity of love, Kama, normally a male deity, as well as Mato Sakura from the various Fate series. Kama is very comparable to Cupid to a degree, being a love deity that shoots arrows at people with her sugarcane bow so that they fall in love. To understand this iteration of Kama, we have to know the legend of him, Shiva, and Parvati. In order to get Shiva to realize Parvati's feelings, Kama was enlisted to shoot Shiva with his arrows. Enraged, Shiva opened his third eye and disintegrated Kama. Also, in Buddhism, Kama is synonymous with the demon Mara, because of this. Mara is a demon that is viewed as an obstacle to Buddhist practice, because when Kama shot Shiva, he was attempting to meditate. Together, Kama and Mara represent the good and evil sides of love. Kama takes possession of Sakura and mostly takes complete control of her, accentuating the darker aspects of Sakura's personality. Sakura is an incredibly tragic character in Fate, being a misplaced daughter, victim of several sexual assaults at the hands of her brother, physically abused, and being the worst of the 3 main heroines in Fate Stay Night. Fight me. Sakura is a very sweet girl despite this, but harbors the potential to be destructive because of her past. Kama was able to merge with Sakura because of her sense of self-depression, lack of self-worth, internal struggle, and personality. Kama found himself able to relate to this and as such took her as his vessel. As such, the connection between the two is weak, as Kama is only possessing her for the one part of her rather than all of her. However, some of Sakura's natural kindness does appear in Kama from time to time. Kama, in actuality, puts up a front and wishes to be loved, and all of her poor attitude is merely a ploy to garner the attention of her master. For the appearance of Kama, she can take the form that best suits her opponent, so you know which ones to kill and which ones to reason with. All of her forms appear as Sakura across different ages, with her lowly version being notably similar to how she appears in Fate Zero. Her second form is close to the corrupted Sakura, and her correct form is an approximation of what Sakura would look like as an adult. Sakura's overall influence on the vessel is poor, and this is obvious through her skills. The only real connection I can find is that Kama is a quick servant, and for whatever reason Sakura is associated with quick. But let's look at what she does inherit. For one, she has divinity rank B, making Jaguar more of a god than Kama. She has blessings of the goddess, which allows her to absorb the life of another servant to heal herself. She has Ananga, which is derived from her alias Ananga the Incorporeal, which is reminiscent of her being disintegrated by Shiva. Finally, she has Mara Papayas, in which she switches to her Mara personality and gains an attack bonus against alter egos. Her noble phantasm for her first two ascensions allows her to use her arrows of love, inflicting mass amounts of damage to the enemy and possibly charming them. Her third ascension, while still doing the damage for the in-game purposes, is more reminiscent of Mara in her beast form, essentially drowning her enemy in pleasure within her body before destroying them completely. As mentioned prior, this vessel is almost entirely just Kama. While there may be room for the original body to express itself, it appears as though Kama is the one who is truly in control. And that is where I'll be wrapping up for now. This will be a two-part episode, and the second part will be released soon after this one. I may compile this and the next one together and upload them as a singular video at some point, but for now we will stop here halfway through. Thank you for watching. I really do hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know if there is a servant or concept that you would like me to do down in the comments. Like the videos, it really does help out the channel. Subscribe to catch these as they go up. Follow my Twitch for significantly less structured content. I also have a Twitter, but for now, keep your chin up. Peace.